First of all, I want to just say before we even get started, it's been really a great time in terms of preparation, and Alan and Larry have done a great job with Scanlon and working out all the pictures that you're going to see tonight. And we've had a really terrific time getting set up, meeting together, and really have had a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. So our thing tonight is notes of a grateful gambler and a cliff jumper, a show business travel log tracing a sometimes scary route from Williamstown to the Hollywood screen. Scanlon and I were roommates our freshman year. I came to Williams having had a brother there, and so I figured I knew when I was going into Williams F that there was our rooms were 2 people in one room and 1 in the other. So I tried to arrive early to get the room so that I'd have a single. And I arrive, and there's Scanlon in that room with, because his brother was there. I don't know how he worked it, but I was really trying to arrive early, and there he was. And in that room, there was a guitar case and a banjo case, and a guy named Johnny with a big smile on his face and a really warm welcome. And we were roommates for the year. And Bill Roberts was our other roommate, and Bill and Scanlon and I really hit it off. And Scanlon knew all the places in town. He worked out deals so that we could get furniture, used furniture. We got it at a great price. We set our room up, and it really was a great room. It became the party room in Williams F. And we also found that 2 days later, Scanlon arrives with a professional sign that says Huffnagel, Roberts, and Gail, wine, women, and song. He was always ahead of us. He was always had the scoop and had the jump on everything, and Bill Roberts and I followed. We had 6 8 o'clocks. Scanlon said, we can do it. We all do it together. We sit in the front row, and by sitting in the front row, we won't get called on. And if we all sit together, we can nudge each other if we fall asleep. He said, I'll get us up for the 8 o'clock class. And at 7:45, he did every day. So we made our 8 o'clock classes. We also, both of us, having had brothers at school, ended up in the first food fight, the large food fight that we got called to by a letter to Dean Hyde's office, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And we're sitting there in his office, and he initiates a Dean's anti-riot squad. We sat there and we listened to him, and he was really giving us a hard time. And somebody said, well, what is the anti-riot squad? And John Hyde said, the anti-riot squad is that you guys, when any disturbance happens on campus, you guys better run like hell and get out of there. Because if you show up again, you're really going to be in trouble. But Scanlon had some other issues with John Hyde, and he became the really recipient and won the prestigious Star Clay Award. And he's going to tell you about that. But the Star Clay Award was, even though problems with John Hyde, he went and won that award. Through freshman year, we studied hard together. We really worked hard and everything else like that. And what we found, Bill and I found, was that Scanlon was becoming absent every once in a while. He'd disappear and never talked about it. He was just one of the guys, but he just never was there at times and did not say anything about it. What he did say was he was from a large family in Grosse Ile, Michigan. And so in preparing for this, really been shocked by some of the things that you'll hear tonight in terms of all the things that he did before Williams. And I just think it's going to be an awful lot of fun, and I'm just going to turn it over to him at this point. He was graduate of Williams, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and a graduate of the lessons learned from a really long time in the entertainment profession. So Scanlon, let me turn it over to you. It's a pleasure, and it's been a real pleasure reconnecting with you, because it's been really 55 years almost,
Yeah.
as most of us have not had an opportunity to see you, and we'll learn the reason why. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, Huff. I so appreciate the opportunity that was given to me to do this, and it was kind of the path was set when Huff said, show us when certain doors open and other doors closed onto certain things, and what you learn from those transitions. So I've had a lot of transitions. The first card where you see my name scratched out there.
Wait, we haven't started the PowerPoint.
Bring it up.
Okay.
Here we go.
So I was christened John Scanlon Gail. Scanlon being my mother's maiden name. And once I started acting, I thought about many times, gee, I should change my name from John, because that's like the same name as 12 people in a medium-sized room or something. But I never got around to it. Got to Williams, I could have done it. That was a clean break, but I forgot to do it at the start. And you can't go up to somebody and say, you know, when you met me yesterday and I said my name was John? Well, actually, it's Scanlon. So that doesn't work. So in my first day of class with Lee Strasberg, the famous actor from the group theater, early Broadway drama, Stanislavski, teacher of Pacino, De Niro, all of them, Shelley Winters, all the actors you probably think are great. In that class, he's reading the roster and he goes, John Gail. I hadn't planned it, I just impulsively, I go, no, that's a typo. It's Scanlon Gail. And I never looked back. So the only time anybody calls me John is when a cop is looking at my license saying, going kind of fast there, weren't you, John? Otherwise, everybody knows me as Scanlon, but I'll be very forgiving of people who are picking up on it and learning it. I'm not going to jump on anybody who does it. So I grew up on this small island the size and shape of Manhattan, in the mouth of where the Detroit River opens into Lake Erie. Paradise. Horses in our backyard, boats in our front yard. Small high school, 100 kids. Me, the only one of 3 sets of twins, and the only one in the sibling family with 3 sets of twins, and me, which forced me, there's the first thing that got me to be as outgoing as I am, is I had to like cover up for the fact that everybody was interested in the twins, not so much in me. My mom, the comedian, singer, actress, equipped me with a good defense. By the time I was 5, some little old lady would go, how does it feel to be the odd one? And I would respond with, well, it's okay, because I'm the only one with a whole brain. So here you see my dad, Max Gail Sr., in front of one of his bands. This would often be twice this size. And his band was a big hit. We were embarrassingly in the social register, the Blue Book for Detroit and Grosse Pointe. And so he was like a proper young man to be on the stag list, but he also really knew how to make a party, really knew how to do Fat Swaller on the piano, and put together great bands, got people dancing, did what it took to make the party work. And eventually there was more demand for his band than he could meet. And so he had 3 brothers, they all had bands. His mom had a boarding house, huge place, with rehearsal rooms in the basement. So he knew all these bands and all these players. And pretty soon he's, well, I can't make it, but I'll send you Joe Schmo and his Kazoo Boys. And he would book bands on those things for all the people who grew up to run GM and Ford, all these big rich folks that I also ended up entertaining for, sometimes as a single, sometimes fronting a 12-piece band, believe it or not, doing, you know, she gets too hungry for. So that in my background and my dad's musical ability to teach me, even though he spoke piano, and couldn't tell what I was doing on the guitar. My older brother and sister learned piano from him, but I'd be looking over his shoulder trying to sort of, make it work for me. My mom had been in New York City studying at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, tall, statuesque beauty. She was the understudy for Johnny Weiss Mills' partner, which was probably Esther Williams, in the 1924 World's Fair at Chicago, the aqua cage, the synchronized swimming and all that stuff. Really beautiful woman. Her dad lost his shirt. She had to come home from New York City. She came back to Detroit, which was close to her home roots. Was working dressing windows at J.L. Hudson's when she met Dad, and they were off to the races. He entered the Navy. They moved down to Grosse Ile, and in a short time, well, they had 5 kids in cloth diapers at one time. So in a short time, they had this big, colorful family. This shot is from a play we put together called The Backward Soldier. That's my brother Max entering backwards, and we have a whole bunch of huge, beautiful shots taken by McCall's Magazine, who came and lived with us for about a week. And I mean, stayed in a hotel, but they were there day to night, shooting on big 4x5 speed Graflex high definition film. So there we are putting on a show, which was not unusual for us. We put on a lot of shows. Some people, play fire department. When we played, we put on plays.
Scanlon, which one are you in that photo?
I'm the one with the mustache on the far right. And the mustache doesn't really read, but in the big oversized jacket. So as my dad was going around to supervise and glad hand the clients who bought his band, sometimes it wasn't just a band. Eventually they're providing all the music for the outer shores, and they might provide Bob Hope or George Gobel or some other named comedy acts to be in that thing. So he would go around of a Saturday evening, and I think from the time I was 8 or 9, he would take me with him. And I would see all these, because we might go to 3 or 4 parties in a night, or a bar or a nightclub kind of thing. And I would see, he didn't really have to say anything. I would see all these people who, if they were a band leader for him, they were great entertainers. They knew how to connect with the audience. And it just somehow, nobody ever coached me really, but it just came to me. Well, I was coached by my mom, being this Ethel Merman, wisecracking. Somebody in a play review said, the outspoken Betty Gale was excellent in her, or something like that. And my mom's response was, outspoken by whom? So she was out there. She was totally out there. And because I didn't have a twin, she kind of took me under her wing in a special way and helped me get groomed. I appreciate this opportunity because I'm looking back and saying, how did I get the nerve and the skill to go out on these gigs as a really young kid, all for adults, sometimes just being dropped off by my dad at the door of a big mansion, and he'd go out to check some other party. And I had to get in there and just do it. So I started cliff jumping at an early age. I would often be totally panicked when I walked in, feeling like, once again, my dad believes in me so much, he's oversold me way beyond my capabilities. But I had to pull it off. And so, my ability to fake it developed early, and I used it a lot at Williams academically. So all that led to me being when the elementary school had a circus production, I was the ringmaster, of course. Eventually led to me, this is my mom and me. I'm probably 10, in a play, in a theater group she started in a fairly big house called, what was it? The Point of No Return, Alan Osborne. I can still remember one line from the play. It was, would you please, kindly, and with alacrity, please pass the sugar, please, I said to my sister. So let's see here. Well, other things that contributed to it. Great Glee Club teacher who taught me how to harmonize. So by the time I was 12 or 13, I was touring the state fairs, oftentimes on the big stage near the racetrack, but most often in this big tent that held about 200 or 300 people with a Corvette in it, tent by Chevy, demonstrating how their beautiful cars were special. And the Corvette body would go up and down, and other things would show it. And they would put 10 or 11 shows a day through there. And often I was always the warm-up act, doing a kind of a hootenanny meets stand-up comic meets audience participation. But warming up the house for Del Shannon, Johnny and the Hurricanes, other groups who had top 40 hits on at that time. So people would be drawn by that. I would warm up the crowd and get them like totally ready to respond. But here I was staying with all these musicians in a hotel, and they were my babysitters, they were overlooking it. So along the way, I also learned from watching those bands how to do Dixieland, how to do Calypso and everything. I became a musical prostitute or a chameleon. And somebody would call my dad's agency and say, "We want a Calypso band." And he said, "No, you don't. You want a Calypso band for probably 20% of the time of the party, but it's going to get old. And so what you want is Johnny Gail and his Calypso band." So he would take some existing Calypso band, put me in charge of it so I could mix in some Chuck Berry and some Tootsie Goodbye and, Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey, and make the party. I would show up with a bunch of extra instruments. And as people, were gathered around me, if I was strolling, somebody would say, "Well, I can play the guitar." And I'd say, "Oh, well, here, take this." And I'd hand him my guitar, pick up my banjo. Somebody come along as we're doing, Sweet Adeline or something. "I can play the banjo." I'd hand him my banjo and I'd get some other instrument, and I would bring out the drum brushes and other stuff, because all these people were, many of them great musicians, but they would never take their instrument to a high tone social party, but they'd be happy to get up and perform. So sometimes I would have 7 or 8 guys or women performing like as the band as we went through the chart of songs that were on the back of my guitar. Sometimes they could even take a break and they would just keep playing. I think that covers Grosse Ile, really. I was off to Williams because the rectory for the church, the short walk through the woods, was our next door neighbor across a lot where we tethered our horses sometimes. And a guy named Danny Crowley had been at Williams. He turned us on to it. Max went there. And I guess the reason I knew what the shops were in Williamstown and stuff is that Max was there in real time, and he obviously coached me. This is JG and the Go Team, but this is for a thing called Team World Nightclub at the State Fairgrounds, but it was a Saturday night nightclub, which they videotaped and ran the tape the following week or Sunday or something. But this is JG, Johnny Gill and the Go Team. But I love in the last line of the copy, it says, "So-and-so, Bill Solomasi on guitar, they really swing." A sign of the times. So I'm off to Williams, suffering some degree of imposter syndrome, mostly academically, because here were all you guys who'd been to Choate or Andover someplace, learned how to type real fast, knew how to do a term paper, had read most of the books in the freshman lit class. And although I got straight A's and B's, it was a small local, small town high school of 400. And, yeah, I did AP English, but I really didn't learn much because I was, because I knew how to fake it so well sometimes. Let's see here. So yeah, I was performing on the side. There's a place called the Country Inn up Route 2. And I used to play gigs there, strolling to the tables, which was off of my format, but also being up in front of the mic, doing a little bit of a hootenanny kind of thing with comedy, because I would interject. Well, you see, they say in this one thing where I'm playing at the Caucus House, the slide that's up now, it says he'll even do an occasional humorous specialty. I had learned to cover all of Alan Sherman's material and Tom Lehrer. And that stuff was very hot then with the grownups. So it was a mix of all these things. But I might be playing a gig like that or flying to New York on a weekend, booked by the Lester Lannan Agency to front one of the Lester Lannan bands. And we would go to some fancy penthouse overlooking Central Park or something. And I would arrive. I would have some musical charts for specialty numbers of mine, but otherwise I learned how to just pick it up and fake it. And the musicians knew what to do. And we would play a gig, I'd stay overnight in the hotel and fly back the next morning. I never went out on New Year's Eve for a date until I was 28, because on New Year's Eve, that's the time you can make the big bucks. So I grabbed, let's see, oh, yeah, some of my influences at Williams, Wally Pugh, Larry Stone, the jug band, that jug band group. Huff, and somebody mentioned another name of somebody who was
Dave Hanai.
Yes, Dave Hanai. So those guys taught me a lot about the part of music I didn't learn because I was too busy being a schmaltzy musical chameleon. But the other thing that happened is somebody from the Treadway Inn saw me at the Country Inn and called me down for an interview and offered me a summer of jobs playing at the Jared Coffin House and the Harbor House on Nantucket, and at two big old historic 3 or 4 story inns in Northeast Harbor, Maine. So I had some great summer jobs, whether I was during the state fair or working the inns for Treadway, doing sea shanties and all my usual stick, often handling requests of any type. I sort of called myself the human jukebox. So after Williams, I take a job teaching at the Pine Cobble School right up the street because Polly, my first wife, was finishing up at Smith's. And I really caught the teaching bug. I've always been kind of bossy, but also interested in show and tell. And I loved it. And so the next year, when Polly graduated, she came to be on the staff at the Pine Cobble School teaching English. Excuse me. And I was starting to discover that that newly appointed headmaster, had been appointed over his head, Peter Principal. He was a revered teacher at a girls' finishing school, and he just didn't have what it took to be the headmaster, because that's a lot of different things, different balls you're juggling. He hit the bottle, it was kind of a mess. And I, having sort of watched my dad run a business and all that stuff, kind of stepped up and filled those shoes in a number of cases. So as fate would have it, some guy named William Holding, who ran the Pike School, a nursery through 9 country day school in the town of Andover, Mass. And so I don't want anybody to get confused when I say Andover or the Pike School. Andover is Phillips Academy and in the town of Andover. So he was doing the inspection for the Independent School Association and saw what I was doing, saw the handwriting on the wall, and stole me away from there, basically. Offered me a job to come and be his assistant headmaster and to kind of be groomed and learn the ropes to maybe take over the reins. Never really realized whether he was blowing smoke or whether other people on the board of trustees decided not to go with me as the new headmaster at the Pike School, and went instead with another person who had been promoted over his head, another Peter Principal, and he too wasn't cutting the mustard. And I was, running major parts of the day-to-day show, and putting sparkle in the school, almost from the get-go. But when the time came for me to be considered, they picked this other guy, and I said to the trustees and stuff, you know what? I'm going to move on. I've been thinking about going to LA, picking up my acting chops and doing that. And a couple of those trustees who voted for me to be the headmaster said, No, don't do that. We want you to stay in education. We'd like you to stay in education around here. Because a couple of them were trustees at Phillips Academy, Andover. And so let me get a sip here. So they said, we will finance, these were rich guys, a master's degree in education, any place you want to go, if you'll come back and teach someplace in the, what was it, the Merrimack Valley, I think they called it, which included Lowell and all those areas. I'm no dummy, I took them up on the offer and went to Harvard Ed School and had the best experience I ever had in education because I knew what I wanted to learn. I wasted a lot of the Williams intellectual and academic opportunity because I was looking for the guts. Those 8 a.m. classes that Huff and Willie and I went to, mostly they made the guts far away on the 3rd floor at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. So in any case, in this Harvard program, they respected that these people had all been something, a prison warden, a headmaster, a blah, blah, blah. And they let them choose anything they wanted to study in all the schools, MIT, Harvard, Radcliffe, all in that sort of nexus there, which allowed me to do some self-study things I did, media related. I got to take a 10-person seminar on how to put music on film and tape with Leonard Bernstein as the lead teacher. And he was at the time recording for PBS, Beethoven's 6th, the Pastoral Symphony. And we would talk in the seminar, we'd see his storyboards, then we'd go down the next day, be on set off camera with him. He'd come over and talk about how they were shooting and stuff. Just, you know, I woke up each day just totally excited to get into the mix. And one of the other things that I got into was experiential learning and further interest in the integrated day. In the New York Magazine article, which comes up a little later, they called me the Starbuck of the open classroom. I'll remind you that Starbuck was Burt Lancaster's carrier in The Rainmaker. And the open classroom is the integrated day where if the kids are counting the squares on the turtle's belly and back, and you need to move on to math, the teacher is not to say, okay, kids, put the turtle away, it's time for math. Rather, you roll right into geometry. Things overlap. You respond to what's going on in the classroom, what the kids are showing you about what they need and can learn and at what pace. So I became kind of a young buck, young Turk at advocating for this and running workshops on it and everything. And I integrated that with this experience. There's me at Andover doing a concert in a hall that sat like 1,000 kids. It was great, doing folk songs. Oh, on the end of my guitar, I'm not sure we can blow it up, you'll see a sort of a silver reflection. This is a testimony to how corny I was when I wasn't doing folk music. I would be strolling at some fancy party. There'd be a dozen people gathered around me, holding their drinks, singing. And a woman would take out a cigarette, because everybody smoked like a fiend then. And she'd do like that. And mostly the men would be slow on the draw to light it for her. And I would light the zip on the end of my guitar, extend it sometimes almost 6 feet across the singing circle to light her cigarette, flip it shut. Everybody would go off, you know, they'd crack up and I'd go, I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. That's how corny I was. On the back of my guitar, I had categories. There was nice, rock, folk, corny. And corny was what they wanted. Corny, I was going to give them. So there I am at Harvard Ed School, having a great time. And the guy who was the headmaster at Harvard Ed School, a famous guy named Ted Sizer, went on to be at Brown. He had decided he was become the headmaster at Andover, Phillips Academy, Andover, as it went co-ed after 200 years and absorbed the girls' school down the road, Abbott Academy. He hired me to be his stalking horse in some ways. stalking horses when the Native Americans put a wounded old horse out on the prairie and wait till the mountain lion that's been bugging them comes to stalk that horse, and they shoot the mountain lion. So I was very radical, I was very outspoken, I was very out of the box, and I was hired in the psychology department to help them set up a program of what you would call group encounter, diversity training, human awareness, we called it. And this included faculty and students, sometimes just faculty, sometimes just students. Everybody had to go through it. I coached the people who were going to run it, and was basically getting people to open up and talk candidly around a circle about misogyny, blah, 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 all the things, because these Abbott girls had been the institution had been looked down on for years. So it was a struggle, but it was a joy. I was really having fun doing wild creative stuff. And then one day I was in a faculty meeting at the beginning of maybe my third year. And I'm listening to some of these old fart PhDs prattle on about how dumb the girls were and how they didn't want to lower their standards or something. And I thought to myself, do I want to wake up here when I'm 65 and say to myself, geez, I wonder if I could have made it as a grown-up actor. And I realized, no, I didn't want to do that. So after the meeting, I walked across the campus and nervously, and this, I haven't pointed out the other cliff jumps. I may do that retrospectively, and you may be able to see what some of those cliff jumps were, but this was a big cliff jump. Going in, telling Ted Sizer that I was going to leave. And he was, hold on a second, he was a wonder about it. This is a beautiful man with like brilliant ideas and everything. He said, I understand. In fact, I thought of, resigning myself, but I can't. I'm the big honcho. They need me. I'm holding it up. But you can do it. And I respect your interest in doing it. But I want you to stay on for the remainder of the year with the same salary, we had a beautiful 4-bedroom house overlooking the wildlife sanctuary built in 1910 or something. So keep the house. And I want you to think about whatever it is you'd like to do on campus for the coming year. Come to me and run it by me, but I'm pretty much going to give you carte blanche because I know you'll come up with something that will help develop the community. So it was heaven. I ended up producing a group involvement. We called it a community candid video self-portrait, the Andover tapes. And we just recorded everybody talking about the experience. And they were also talking about going co-ed and all that stuff. All the issues on campus got put into a big slide show with other presentations mounted on a big thing that looked like a TV, big screens, rear projected in the Commons dining hall. I was the adjunct to a professor who was teaching a course called Man and Society, which was an antiquated name since they'd gone co-ed, but where he taught AP Poli-Sci to a group of students in the first semester. And then I would take them and work them into a team that was self-supporting using some of the Outward Bound techniques, because Outward Bound was one of the activities at Andover at Phillips Academy, but it was called Search and Rescue, which is where I learned all my winter mountaineering skills and everything. And I taught those skills to those kids. And then we went up in the Appalachian Mountains to a AMC club cabin, stayed there for several days, but we had to ice axe and snowshoe to get up there and spend one day in a tent, when it was 20 below and 30-mile-an-hour winds. Some tricky stuff, but it was a great bonding experience.
Let's
And
go
at
off
the
the
same
cliff.
time, one of the guys who was also a trustee and a parent at the Pike School in Andover was a Greek American guy who went to Amherst, who became a board member for a couple of big board companies, including SCA Services, which was basically solid waste management, but huge conglomerate. And so he had a small chain of hotels and nightclubs where the bartenders were stealing a couple $100,000 a year from him. And there's me when I was running the nightclubs. And this actually, when I segued into starting to act in commercials, that was a useful shot to have. What you don't see is under that suit, I often was carrying a 38 snub nose because we were, he was kind of connected. The garbage industry is connected a lot with wise guys. And in fact, we had a guy who was kind of our mentor and protector, Uncle Sal, you know, whose nose is over here. And he stepped in a couple of times. But our lawyer, who was also Boston Police Department lawyer, told my boss that that there was a plot afoot to time the door to my whole hotel room shut, throw a Molotov cocktail through it, or to take me out of the picture in some way. So they took me to the Boston Police Department firing range, trained me how to shoot, and I was basically never without it if I was off the property. On the property, I had armed bodyguards who were also, we didn't call them doormen, they were all dressed like this, and we called them floormen. And in that lounge, we had the greatest entertainment this side of Vegas, we called it. It was a tacky, slightly smaller Las Vegas showroom, where because I knew how to book talent, I was booking Tina Turner, Tito Puente, Rodney Dangerfield, Maynard Ferguson, Gloria Gaynor, a lot of disco acts, Charlie Callis, stuff like that. Because I knew how to book the talent, and I could also book it through Gail and Rice, the big agency that was still operating in Detroit, and get better prices, better action, you know, better access to these big name acts. So I have some wise guy stories. If we have time later, we'll talk about it. But Huff asked me something we might ask later. It's like, how did I learn how to ride? How did I learn how to do this? And the question might be also, how did I learn how to shoot and when to duck and run for cover? Definitely some cliff jumping involved in continuing with that job when there was some real personal risk involved. So let's see here. There we are, how I learned to shoot. I think that's it. I'm going to segue to, I think that's enough about Sizer, Huff, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Just go on to New York.
Yep. Well, we go to LA first. Jose
LA, yep.
Feliciano was one of those other acts we booked. But anyhow, I took some of the money, my pocket roll, my nest egg that I'd made in those businesses, which had some nefarious elements I could also talk about later. But in any case, I got clear of it. Well, getting clear was good. In fact, eventually, 5 years later, my boss did some time for insider trading. Williams and other gigs. Sorry, I'm out of position here. 3, 4, Malibu and Hollywood. Okay, so I get in the car, I drive to Malibu, where I live with my brother, and started getting my body back after all that time drinking and buying drinks for people in the hotel lounges and showrooms. Sometimes I'd spend $300 or $400 a night of company money to like, hey, set up that corner down there. But then they wanted me to drink with them. So I started getting in shape, started running marathons, started studying with Lee Strasberg, started looking for some agents, and I went up while I was doing that to San Francisco to give some notes of a new vaudevillian director, me, to the Flying Karamazov brothers. Some of you may have heard of them. They did, I think it was As You Like It on Broadway, and won, you know, Tonys for it and everything. A band of jugglers who played classical instruments, which they called Barbarian Rococo Vaudeville. And while they were practicing their musical instruments and I was on a break, they said, well, you might as well be juggling while you're not working directly with us. And so it was like, bam, they taught me how to juggle in about 2.5 minutes. And these light bulbs went on about everything pedagogic and anti-pedagogic I've been working on and stewing on and everything. And I put together this thing called for which I got big grants. This show is not about juggling. But I still didn't write for the grants yet, but I was developing that idea. And which sort of demystified juggling. Did I mention this? That the way the show opened, I would say, the reason you have to learn to juggle yet is at least twofold. First part being the myth that it's difficult, complex, and reserved for especially coordinated people. Said myth having been perpetrated by the assholes who would juggle on the street with this kind of "I'm hot, you're not" attitude, thereby defying me to define the audience to have show and tell eye contact. Can you put me on camera now for a moment?
No, because I don't want to stop the screen sharing. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to put this slide on though that shows you with all the people in the park and everything.
Okay, well, I'd like to show this card that's behind me, but at a point, it can come up anytime. That's a good little aside. So in any case, this is like it was, these are smaller, more intimate shows, but sometimes I would be, well, let's wait till we get to that. We'll get to the juggling part. Let me finish up here. I head to New York, following Lee Strasberg, because he's taught both in New York, in LA, and at NYU, the Tisch School of Film and Theater, I think. So I was studying with him and, trying to get known in New York, get agents there and all that stuff. When they came to me and said, let's not go to the headshots yet. Well,
Okay.
Actually that was books. Some of those were before. No, that's what I'm coming, whatever, I'll keep talking. Let's just hold there for a moment.
Okay.
They came to me, they said, you can't do class on Monday if you don't come up with the $90. I was broke, living in a shared, apartment where somebody had checked out and had some extra time on the lease, sleeping on cardboard boxes. But I took some more cardboard boxes and made a sign that said, "Learn to juggle here and now from the still learning juggler. $5. Today's special, ladies, half price." Went out at the corner of Central Park, started doing my shtick, which was like bringing people in, classic street shill with comedy. And I had a bunch of lemons that I would give the people and teach them how to juggle. People would step forward. This became a weekend thing. Sooner or later, New York Magazine heard about it. They covered it. I got 5,600 phone calls in response to this article. Some of them from folks who just wanted to learn how to juggle. Some of them from a law firm that wanted me to teach the junior and senior staff members as a team building exercise. Some of them for commercials, like the shots you'll see of Cheryl Teagues. But there is a line in here, we never blew it up, but this is where they called me the Starbuck of the open classroom. Starbuck, I'll remind you, being the character from The Rainmaker, Burt Lancaster, where he gives people belief in themselves. And so that's part of what I was doing in this show, and also in my workshops about the open classroom, is getting people, I was demystifying this newfangled stuff. And for the juggling and trick roping and bullwhipping, which I taught to people in these things, or spinning plates on a stick, might not be in this shot. That's what I was doing. I was busting the myth that all the people who knew how to do it were playing their cards close to the vest and not sharing. And I was showing people how easy something was, get them going at it, and teach them how to teach other people fast and funny. And boy, after that, there's the commercial that came from it. There's a bunch of these shots. They wanted me to be in this commercial with Cheryl Teagues. And by the way, I never dressed in mime clothes or any of that on the street. Although I can mime, I kind of avoided that image. And although one of my best buddies was Philippe Petit, who was always in mime gear and walked between the World Trade Center towers, he and I were featured in a show at the Bottom Line, New York's top 10 street performers. But for this commercial, good money, good residuals, sure, no problem. I'll put on the outfit. So Cheryl Teagues had never juggled, but she was game. And so that's all we did in the commercial. I think it was for Pepsi. was roll candid video, handheld and everything, of me teaching her how to juggle and her lighting up with the joy of it. And I mean, she was great. She was beautiful. She learned real fast. As I told Huff and Alan and Larry, maybe at the end of it, she said she loved me, and that was enough for me, man. I was like, ooh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me kill this. Sorry. I'm going to take a pill. That's all right. All right. So this is stuff from the grant funded show, which I got when I came back to LA. I'll get into that, return to LA a little more. But one of the things I did when I came was put all this stuff together. And I had all the New York Magazine piece and all that stuff, which was going to help me write a great grant application for the LA Endowment and the LA Department of Cultural Affairs. So I wrote this proposal to appear in a one-man show with a cast of thousands, audience participation thing called This Show Is Not About Juggling. And that was it. It was not about juggling, although people would learn how to juggle. It was really about how to learn things, new things, how to put trainer wheels on juggling balls. In other words, how to make it simpler, how to put trainer wheels on a trick rope. Oh, I'm on camera then. No, I'm not on camera.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to pan to one of the cards. The card that's behind me is one of the slides we would have of these shows. And one of them I was very proud of. It said, anything I can do, you can do better. Like the old song, anything you can do, I can do, you can do better, whatever. I would invert it because the whole idea was I didn't show off. Oftentimes I never juggled in the show until the very last moments of it. Because when somebody steps up, if they would step up to my street teaching thing and say, well, I can juggle. And I said, whoa, not so fast there, Abernathy. And I would say, can you juggle clubs? And they'd say no. So I would hand them one of the juggling clubs and get them started on that, because nothing bursts the bubble of confidence for people learning something new than for some show off to get in there and, you know, steal their thunder. So, so I got these grants, gave me like 50 grand to hire my friends, put them in the show, gave me more footage and rave reviews, helped to get a further grant. First series of grants called This Show Is Not About Juggling. Second one, How to Do Nearly Everything. And I can get more into the training wheels for a trick rope thing later. Or as an aside, anybody who has questions about any of this that don't fit into the questions thing, I'll make my email available. Contact me. I'll coach you on the juggling. I'll send you the juggling textbook and diploma. Be no longer than any textbook needs to be, 2 pages. And the diploma is right there in that same document.
Let's keep cruising there. All right.
Okay, man. So here we are, back in LA. Did a lot of small theater, waiver theater, commercials, got my theatrical agents. The audition process, how things have changed. This happens to be a film that was directed by the director of several commercials I appeared in. This is called Camus' Shoes, shot in Ann Arbor, about me meeting the ghost of Albert Camus, or some guy impersonating him, we never really know, and talking metaphysics all night. I'm some kind of a real estate dweeb. So auditions and how they've changed, and income stream, revenue stream. Used to be you had to like drive all the way across town to pick up the sides, which is what they call the pages of the script you're in, and then go back home, rehearse it, drive all the way back across town to go on camera and audition, sometimes with the producers and directors in the room, or sometimes they were on camera there. And you know, then you either heard or you didn't hear. Now it's all become streamlined. The pandemic helped a lot of this, where they email you the pages, you learn the script, you do an audition either virtually on camera with the casting director, or you actually record the audition yourself in your home and then email that to the casting directors. They get it to the producers. they say, yeah, we want to see this guy, and this guy on a callback. Revenue stream. One of the things that's been scary about the thing is figuring out, am I going to make a living this year? Am I going to book anything this year? Well, fortunately, there's residuals. You're all familiar with the concept, I'm sure, but you get paid the session fee. You get paid with a check that shows every time they showed this commercial or this film. You get a separate fee when it goes on the airlines or when it goes to other venues. And it really shows the dates and stuff. Sometimes we'd be getting ready to make dinner. We'd be watching TV. We'd see a commercial I had running. And I'd say, honey, stop it. We're going out to dinner. We just made $90. But the other things you make money on are voiceovers, a thing called looping, which is when you replace the dialogue, either your own, if it wasn't clear, or they want to change some part or do something off camera for a film, which you get paid again for, or for another movie that you're not involved with, they hire what's called the loop group. And we go in there and put in all the other verbal audio, the crowds on the street, some of them speaking Polish, some of them doing this, the guys on the oil rig, using oil rig jargon. We have big Bibles of jargon for different settings. Milling around the mic in a circle so they get the proper effect. That actually pays residuals. You never get a credit for it, but I've got a number of movies that I've looped and I keep getting residuals for it. It's ongoing. In the early days, I also had to do print. But in any case, all those things you put together, you can make a pretty damn good living. And SAG has a great pension, health and welfare program. This is from a commercial for Coca-Cola. I think the prior shot was from an earlier commercial for Coca-Cola. This led me to getting there I am, younger, Coca-Cola. And then I think they booked me as the priest because they'd worked with me before. And being on the Super Bowl as a priest led to a lot of people then booking me later as priests. So I had my own clerical collar. And I actually performed a wedding for the daughter of one of the directors who I first met when I came back from New York, who put me in a play, led to a whole series of plays we did together. So am I moving along fast enough off because we started late?
No, you gotta keep cruising there.
How much time do I have?
Yep. Well,
How much time?
you've got another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I'm almost thinking we can probably back up and fill in the blanks. But so residuals, I explained how the audition process works. Well, the communities of theater. What have I gotten from all this gambling? One of the things that happens is in the old days when you actually went to the auditions for a commercial, you would sometimes be doing, like when I was in the young husband category, you would sometimes be doing 5 or 6 auditions in a day, changing from a chef's outfit to a plumber's outfit, all the clothes in your car, driving across town. There were no cell phones. You had a pager. Your agents would call and say, oh, you just got a call back for this spot. So you double back and go do that one. It was very hectic. I lost my favorite about how I was tying that in. So in the old days, we do that. So this show, in the same time I handled Spanish, English, and sign language. Did we already put up the reviews for this show? The
Which,
juggling show?
this one?
No, that's to the plays.
I think we need to move on, Scanlon.
I want to show that slide, please. Did we show it? Or
Yeah, we
not?
did.
That's all.
We did. We showed the juggling one.
All right, I'll quote to you the best review that I was proud of in there, which said, at the end of the show, the audience was captivated, nearly mesmerized, and everyone in the audience was chuckling and grinning with newfound self-awareness. Okay, go back to wherever you were if you want. I
These
don't
are
know, man. I think
these are the
we're-
videos.
That's 5. Okay, this is from a film called Caddy Woodlawn, about a girl who grew up on the Midwest, on the frontier, when the frontier was the Midwest. Produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment and PBS, in which I play an Indian-hating bigot who's good with kids. Okay, roll tape.
We massacre these Dakotas. That'll send a message to all of you. We mean business here, young cow. There is no time to wait for anybody.
There's no video?
It didn't
You
show?
don't have video? It's just showing slide.
Just it showed us slides.
All right, sorry, technical problem here. I don't think we'll be able to show it.
Well, if we can come back to it later and show them, I'd sure like to
Okay.
see that. So, try the next one.
I think it's gonna be the same problem, Scanlon.
Oh, fuck. There's no point in showing them. Go ahead, roll it a bit, but I think we'll bail out here.
Okay, let's keep moving.
People can. You were gonna try that one and see what happened?
Which
Try the
one?
other 2 videos. If it's not happening, if it's just still slides. That's Sam Elliott. I'm riding up to him, telling him we're gonna hang him. Okay. We'll send it to you. Because there's no point in looking at that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That's out of sequence. That's from the prior film. Now we got the thing from the Volkswagen. Can we at least show the image of that, the card for, that's the Indian hating bigot.
Okay,
Okay, did we go by the shots from the VW commercial?
which one was that?
That's the Jaws spoof.
Yes,
Okay, we'll try to get back to it. That's a shame. All right. This is a guy named Alexander Minot, who appeared in a 10-minute film that was being produced by the makers of Black Star Beer called The Make-Believe History of Black Star Beer. And they put this thing together, which was going to show parts of it as commercials. It was also going to air in movie theaters and on other outlets, the beginning of streaming network stuff. And this guy was like a Howard Hughes character who sunk his submarine off the coast of Madagascar. You can go through some other shots of that guy if you've got him. The architect, Alan, the architect,
I don't,
Someone-
oh, yeah, okay, yeah,
whatever's in sequence here. So they shot all this stuff, me being rescued off the coast of Madagascar. And the deal was, I was gonna make a fortune. Because when they hire you, they get your exclusivity. This is the other part of the residuals thing. You guarantee not to work in another beer commercial as long as you're doing Black Star or Coors. And even if they don't run it, or they have to pay you for each time they run it, if they decide to hold on to it for a minute and not show it, they have to pay you a holding fee every 13 weeks, which is equivalent to what you made on the first day you shot, for not using your, for the exclusivity to hold on to your image. Is there any more from this Black Star beer?
no,
That's it.
maybe we can move on to
Okay.
the Rocketeer.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, the shot on the left is me in the film Rocketeer, for which I had gone up to Santa Maria to get prepared for a haircut and getting character. I'll tell you that story later, but that's where I met my beautiful wife. And the other shot is me with my trick rope, which I was using on the set of Doogie Howser to teach Doogie Howser how to juggle and trick rope in the breaks. When I was teaching him machetes in the parking lot, his mom pulled up and had a conniption. He could already juggle, but okay. You got more Rocketeer? No, there's my beautiful wife, Sarah Gardner Gail, who I met on the set of Rocketeer, who didn't know that I was an actor when she saw me in civilian clothes on the set the prior day. And she has often confessed that when she met me in the parking lot that night, she probably wouldn't have talked to me if she knew I was an actor. Because crew have an attitude about actors because we're in first class sitting there when they get on the plane to go to the back and all the other things you might think they're snobby about actors for. Sarah is a set decorator, dresser, assistant decorator on things, big ticket movies, the Hunger Games movies, The Color Purple, the movie, Dunkirk, Inception, Star Trek, and Mission Impossible, Contact, Chaplin, The Rocketeer, Avalon, Hairspray, Tin Men, also directed by Barry Levinson. So she's a gifted artist and painter. I thought I was going to be able to pan my camera. Maybe when we go to Q&A, I can show them that slide and I can pan past the slides and you'll see some of Sarah's artwork on the wall. I think I'm ready for you to, we got
Yeah,
another
just
minute.
Ted, Ted McPherson, you've got a question, and I know.
Okay, should we just go through these last slides real quickly and then we can
Yeah.
go Q&A?
Andersonville trials. Not a happy camper in that one. Same thing. A play. I had just a headshot, but staged to look like I looked in several movies. That's my own hat. It's all my own clothes. You own a lot of wardrobe. Next. You know what? I can't remember the name of this show, but it was with Tim Curry. And I'm also not a happy camper. I've been beat up. I've been brought in for interrogation. Next. Once again, I can't remember the title of this, but this is an M. Night Shyamalan movie, which took us on location, which often happened for us, to Philly for like 3 months. We had some great time being on location in New Orleans, Atlanta, New York, Philly, Santa Fe, New Mexico, where they give you the money they'd have to spend on the hotel. You can find a charming historic sublet and be a professional tourist. Go out to dinner with the crew. The local crew shows you all the restaurants to eat in. Some kind of commercial, I can't recall which. Handsome guy though, right? There's none of me with my hair pieces here. I have a small fleet of them, curly, slick, and the ponytail. I'll tell you stories about that if we get time. Headshot. You shoot tons of headshots. Fez Man from ER. I was psychotic and afraid they were going to steal my fez. I was a Shriner, obviously. Commercial for Glad. You may remember we were looking around for our cows. Is my wife in with these, or did we cut that? Looking around for our cows, couldn't find them. And then we find them, they're all stacked up on top of each other next to the silo, which then segues into the stacking Tupperware you can get from Glad. I didn't write it, I just worked in it. Lone Star Beer, the Stetson guy. Also a handsome dude, I think. Well, my mustache is a little bit lopsided there.
Okay, that was the last slide. Should we stop?
All right, I think Scanlon, that's great story, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. So, Ted, I know you have had a question. You've had your hand up, and if you all would put your hands up, then we can call on you. But go ahead, Ted.
Hey, Scanlon, Ted McPherson. What advice would you give to our 12-year-old granddaughter who says her goal is performing on Broadway, having already acted and sung in a dozen plays on stage, now dancing on a competitive dance team? So what advice do you give to young aspiring performers?
Okay, I forget, where are you, Ted?
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, okay. So first thing is get headshots. Second thing is get in a learning group. Probably first, take some classes, and I can make contact with you specifically. A lot of the casting directors who I know and love, there's that card I was talking about. Oops, wrong way. You'd think I know camera. A lot of the casting directors I know well. Wrong way, Scanlon. Yeah.
That's fine. We got it.
Got it. Okay. So a lot of those casting directors go to cities like Dallas and teach workshops. But also a lot of workshops are taught that are total ripoffs. So one of the good things is that if you take one with one of those people who's in Hollywood, then when she comes to Hollywood, she'll know those casting directors, and it's to their advantage to get her cast on things, get her on calls, because that reflects well on her. So get headshots, start studying, work on your chops, and hook up with me. I'd be glad to, do a 10-minute session, 20-minute session with me. And does she have any headshots yet?
Probably not.
Okay, but she might have some production stills from which you can lift something, but you need good headshots. You
Okay.
could sort of shoot something yourself, but the guys who do them and do them right, they know exactly what they want to see.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
email me. I'll fill you in. I've got some pointers that are emailable, little blogs that are like how to break into show business.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Scanlon.
Hey, Scanlon, I just wanted to ask you, basically, you've worked with a whole lot of different people
Yeah.
as actors. Who was the best to work with, and who was the worst?
Okay, let me do a quick little list of some highlights. Kirk Douglas, Burt Lancaster, Eli Wallach, Dustin Hoffman, Sybil Shepherd, Kim Basinger, Cheryl Teagues, Marlo Thomas, taught both of them how to juggle. Beth Henley, the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, but also an actress, appeared in and with her. Ed Harris, Amy Madigan, Neil Patrick Harris, Roddy McDowell, Randy Quaid, David Carradine, Howard Hessman, Tim Curry, Charles Durning, who was a doll. So on the set of Tough Guys, which starred Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster, it was just a noticeable difference. We would take a break and but not go back to our trailers. Sometimes you break short and you stay there. Mr. Douglas, as you call them all Mr. Douglas would step out of his elevator shoes and go with his aide over to a corner of the boxcar of a train where we were shooting, us jumping on, climbing up onto the boxcar each time. And in the scene, Burt Lancaster, who had just had open heart surgery, would lean down and pull us up. So here we are on the break. He's been doing all this stuff as we're trying to get back in the boxcar the next time. He could have let some assistant pull us back up into the boxcar, but he reaches down and pulls us up himself. He was so open, sweet, sharing all the stories, tell us about this role, and just, he wanted to share the joy he'd had from doing that stuff with us. And Kirk Douglas barely knew we were alive. Now, granted, we were bit players, we were small parts in a big deal, but never forgot it. Charles Durning and Eli Wallach, total high-class acts, sweet guys. Same with Ed Harris and Amy Madigan. Does that cover it?
Yeah, except the worst.
The worst. Let me think if there was
Maybe you don't
anybody
wanna
worse
say
than
it.
Kirk Douglas. Well, there were a lot of worse ones, but you probably wouldn't know their names.
Yeah, okay.
They were playing bad ones. There's one commercials director who's just famous for absolutely yelling and screaming at the actors, telling them they're idiots and, what the fuck are you doing? But he books a lot of gigs, so people put up with it.
Okay, Brian Hickman. Just, yeah.
Yeah, hi, Scanlon. Really interested in your juggling, and the idea is sort of pedagogy, how you can learn anything. And if I could get your email, I'd love to follow up with you, because I would think something like this would be great in some of the inner city schools in Rochester, where kids would get excited about the juggling, but it could be tied in with work and also attendance. You don't get to get in on the juggling if you haven't been in school for 3 weeks.
Absolutely, you're right. And my heart palpitates thinking of helping you with it, because I call myself, here, this says perfect in Mandarin. That's one of the cards. Those would be around too. One of
Bill?
the points I'll send you first, but along with some other things, and then we'll talk, because I've done a lot of this, teaching people, because I teach people how to juggle, not to be a show off. But when there was a point when I wasn't making that much money and I was substitute teaching, I would walk in with 35 pounds of juggling gear, magic tricks, and a guitar covered with stickers. And I would use it as an incentive for people to do well in the class. You do good, you're going to see the magic trick. I'll show you how to do the magic trick.
Bill
and,
Taylor. Yeah, Bill Taylor, do you have your hand up?
So hook up with me and I'll give you everything.
Yeah, well, give me your email address.
No, not now. You'll get it. We'll send it out.
Yeah, all right. If you send it to me, that'd be great.
We're wrong. But we'll hook everybody up with stuff we didn't provide. We'll link you to the videos, show you the juggling diploma, all that stuff. Ex post facto. In post. We'll fix it in post.
Bill Taylor, did you have your hand up? No, you're on mute. Unmute yourself. Okay,
Rick Ackerley has a question.
Rick Ackerley, you've got your hand up. Well, you're on mute too. Take yourself off of mute.
What an amazing career you've had. What a story. And
Thank you. I'm looking forward to
you must
talking.
have been anxious a lot. And
Ah.
at what ages were you most anxious? And yeah, tell us about your anxiety
That's
in
really
the
interesting.
career.
Yeah, totally. You couldn't be more spot on with that question. Perhaps when I was most anxious, when my dad would send me out on a job that I knew, because he didn't know what I could do. He just believed I could walk on water. And he would send me on some big job with grownups that I was completely unqualified for. By the end of that gig, I was qualified because I had to like put it together, but often terrified going into a house, a big party with half drunk adults and stuff. That's where the whole thing of me getting them playing instruments helped to diffuse, because I didn't have to be on, they'd be on. And that's a lot of what I did. You don't see me entertaining, you see them entertaining themselves with me blowing on the coals. But subsequently, biggest fear when I left the job in Andover, biggest anxiety, a couple of times when I had a gun stuck up my nostrils. Let's see. Well, the first plays in grown-up theater without my mom, where's my mommy, you know, putting it all together. Stage fright is a useful energizer, but when you're doing the first one and you're doing it with, you know, some big time people or something, that's cliff jumping. But leaving all the jobs I left, leaving one school, leaving another, those are some of the high points of.
What were your anxious ages? At what ages were you most anxious?
At 12, at 18, at 18 going to Williams, starting at 20 at the Pine Gobble School at Andover. So, you know, it hasn't stopped really. You know, it's all an act, man. It's like, but you use it. That's the thing about method acting. You take what's real and you learn how to manipulate it. You do emotional memories of times when you were that anxious, and you learn what results, and you revisit that in a sensory way. And not by trying to get the effect of tears, but by smelling the shampoo on your mom's hair, or by seeing the coffin go down it, and you find out, oh, that makes me, like, sometimes a funeral will make you laugh, but that's okay. It's a different kind of laughter. So you harness that anxiety. That's Strasberg would say, somebody would say, oh my God, I'm nervous. And he had this little speech impediment. He'd go, that's good, darling. That's how you know you're alive.
You can see, Rick, how well he did it when Huff asked him to do this Zoom. He harnessed his anxiety really well.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I don't know if I've got any other questions at the present time, but Scanlon has been very nice about saying, hey, if you've got a question, get to me, and we'll make that available. We'll also try and make available the little video that showed 3 different situations that he was in, and they were really, really fun. Brian, you had one. No, it's a thumbs up. I see. I'm sorry.
I'd like to do an aside here on something that's really important. What did I get from all this? Besides the money, and which continues to flow, I got these wonderful friends and many communities that overlap on each other like a Venn diagram. The people you sat in 3,000 audition waiting rooms with, the people you did a play with, the people you were on location with. I tell people, if you're on location for 1 day or 2 days for a commercial, that's the equivalent of going to summer camp with those people for 2 weeks. If you're on location for a movie for 3 months with people, that's like being fellow camp counselors for 5 years in terms of the bonds you develop and how that carries forward. And some of those people were the same. The people from Two Idiots in Hollywood, which also got made into a movie, which was kind of Dumb and Dumber before its time. Yeah, you can get that on Rotten Tomatoes or someplace. Totally stupid, totally outrageous, outlandish play. And we went right by the reviews. Look for the reviews of Two Idiots in Hollywood, and you'll see what an incredible piece it was, and the fun we had, the joy we had making that with people.
Scanlon, thank you. That
Thank
was
you.
just awesome. It was a lot of fun. And as I say, it's been a great time for all of us to reconnect with you and to have
Hey,
an
hey, Huff,
opportunity.
Huff,
Yeah.
do
Yes.
you have time for
Paul,
one more question?
I do. From Paul Lipoff, yes.
Where
Thank you
is-
very much.
where's the fun?
John,
There, hi, Paul.
John, you've been on the set of movies where there's guns and rifles and ammunition and so forth. This thing about Rust that just came down, do you have some insights about what went on and what should have gone on that would be of interest to us?
Absolutely. He's
Thank
an
you.
asshole. And even the way he talked early on, his lawyers have shut him up now, but demonstrated he didn't take the time or trouble to become informed and know how to handle a gun. He talks ignorantly about it. And somebody's raising their hand. Can I finish?
Yeah, finish up.
Okay.
Talking about Alec Baldwin, right?
Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
clarify, Alec Baldwin on the set of the movie Rush. He was doing a rehearsal that wasn't supposed to be happening, and he shot, and the bullet went right through the director, the assistant director, and killed this beautiful young cinematographer. And actually, I think we were going to find out today whether they were pressing charges or not. I haven't had time to look at the paper, but
They are.
They
he
are.
really didn't. He demonstrated in his talk he didn't even know how a gun works, because he says, "Go ahead." Somebody's raising their hand. Go ahead.
I don't see that.
Oh, I keep seeing a hand there. Okay. Yeah, pitiful, terrible, and he's kind of an asshole because when I worked with Kim Basinger on a champagne commercial, she was lovely. He was kind of a jerk. But it's a tragedy that didn't have to happen, and it was his fault. Other people were at fault, the armorer, other people, but they were being pushed by the producers to rush, to cut corners, and he was one of the producers. So terrible.
Thanks. Okay, so I think really we've got it since we're close to 8:30 and have had a great session. Our next one is going to be on March 16th, is it? Wally Wilson. And we've got, Wally took a trip that is really a spiritual trip, and I don't know whether Wally is on or not, but we're looking forward to hearing from him. And we have a number of additional ones set up for us. And we just wanted to thank you, Scanlon, for putting this all together for us and for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in the future too, in terms of being, but I know that's one of the things we talked about was it was so hard to get back to Williams with all of the calls and things like that you had, but we love having you back and talking with us. And thank you all. And thank you all for tonight. Alan, do you have anything more you want to say?
No, you said it well. It's been an absolute joy to reconnect with Scanlon after all these years and to put together this PowerPoint. I apologize for the videos. There were two little things that I failed to click. Next time with Scanlon, we'll get it right. So it's been an absolute joy to see all of you and to work with Scanlon. Thanks a lot.
Don't
And
worry, we'll take it off your resume. And in the background here, you'll see my multi-gifted, talented wife, some of her artwork on the wall. And that's one of the words for Brian. It comes up big when you start teaching somebody they think is hard. You keep stressing the word easy, perfect, not yet. At the end of the show, I ask the audience, by the way, do you guys know how to do brain surgery? The whole audience says, not yet.
Okay, well, not yet, but we really appreciate hearing about your career, and it's been one that you cobbled together in just a great way. And it sounds like it's one that you've enjoyed and been very happy in life with it. So good luck to you and good night to you all. And thanks for joining us. Night, guys.
Great. Everybody email me because I didn't get a chance to even look and see who all is there. So thank you.
Thank
Right,
you.
good night.
Happy trails.
All right.
Night, everybody.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks to our crack production team.
You're very welcome. Hey, Bert.
Hey, Bert.
Hi, Bert.
Hey.
Nighty night, guys.
Hi, Bert.